He bought a New York City hot dog from a vendor. They brought it back into the kitchen. They cut it up. They put some garnish on it. They made it look great. And they brought it out as a course in the middle of the meal. And they said, we overheard you guys and we didn't want you to leave the country without having a taste of a New York
I love
City
that.
street hot dog.
I love that.
Meet Social Pro from Opinion, the #1 social media management platform in property management. Create once. Publish everywhere. Publish all the content that matters, stories, posts, reels, tweets, and more. From Facebook to Instagram and beyond, Social Pro lets you create beautiful, optimized content in seconds.
Send posts to every major social network, instantly or on a schedule, all with just one click. Easily stay on brand using built-in Canva integration, premium stock photos, and custom watermarks. One inbox. Every comment, DM, and mention all in one place. Measure what matters with clear insights into top posts, audience growth, and engagement stats across all locations. Collaborate, post, schedule, create. Social Pro elevates resident engagement with AI-powered simplicity.
Social Pro from Opinion. Elevate your brand. Engage your residents.
Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people and the things that bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Deese. I'm also the CEO of Student Housing Insight. This is your first time running across Student Housing Insight. Number one, we welcome you, but a little bit of background is we are a platform for off-campus student housing professionals to network, share ideas, as well as data. You can find out more about our platform by going to studenthousinginsight.com. In addition to the podcast, we also host the industry's monthly webinar for the U.S. called Shop Talk. Each month, we provide legislative and policy updates that are impacting our industry. Shop Talk also provides a monthly overview of pre-leasing data on a national and a regional basis, along with a panel of operators who provide their on-the-ground observations. And we typically also have a topic of the month as well. So a lot of great information. If you are involved with the operations of student housing in the U.S. in any kind of way, regardless if you're an owner-operator yourself or a vendor to the sector, you should be registered to receive our monthly invites for Shop Talk. You can register to receive those as well as review prior Shop Talk webinars by going to shoptalk.info. Again, that's our website specifically for Shop Talk. Again, it's shoptalk.info. And if you're driving or running, don't bother writing that down. All of that will be in our show notes as well. So if you've been listening to the podcast over the summer, we've had just kind of a slew of content that has come from our ambassadors, and we'll talk a little bit about our ambassador program here in a moment, but we're doing that again today. Sarah Maxson with Core Properties has got an interview that she did with Dan Goldberg at Core Spaces. So I want to bring Sarah into the podcast. Sarah, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good.
You've got a busy summer. Not only are you rolling out a bunch of things, but you've also got wedding nuptials that are coming up. So how's the planning going?
It's actually not been really stressful at all. I feel like when you exist in this industry for as long as I have, this is like, it's prepared me. I've been preparing my whole life for something like this. So it actually really hasn't even registered on the radar. I mean, we're about 2.5 months out. So I feel like as it gets closer, I'll get more stressed. But for now, I'm doing great. It's going good.
Good. Well, good. Well, really quick for those in the audience that may not know Sarah Maxson and who you are, what it is, what your history's been in the industry, and of course now you're at Core Spaces, but maybe they would like to know a little bit of background on the current position you're serving in, and just
Yeah.
give us the Sarah story.
Yeah, I like many people in this industry fell into student housing by accident. I was an athlete at Clemson University and I needed a part-time job after I graduated. So I was a part-time leasing agent for Aspen Heights. Got promoted and made my way through the ranks very traditionally, and joined Jordan Vardabedian at CA Ventures back in 2018, worked with her, and then she and I switched over last year to Core Spaces, and I am now a senior manager of sales and operations for the sales and leasing team at Core Spaces. It's been really fun. We're building something really incredible over at Core. So I oversee all sales and leasing efforts for our operational assets across the country. I have a great group of ladies and gentlemen that work for me and really just drive leasing and sales success at Core. And I couldn't do what I do without them. So that's the long short. Pretty traditional, but it's been really fun. I love getting to do this every year because even though it's the same fundamentals, the industry and the conditions and the market conditions and who we're targeting is changing so rapidly nowadays that I just feel like every year brings new challenges. So while it's the same basics, it's very different each year. And I think that most people listening to this can probably agree and relate to that.
Yeah, I've been in this now for 28 years, if you can believe that. And it's the more things stay the same, or the more things change, there's so many things that stay the same, right? And what has been amazing, especially since kind of your generation has stepped into the roles that you're now in, is just how long the leasing season is now. It used to be something where, if if you didn't have your rates together before going into turn for the next year, it was not a big deal. Heck, most of us didn't even meet and talk about that. And the thing was, let's make sure that everybody goes home at Thanksgiving with their renewal offer. And that was like progressive at the time. Like,
Right.
oh, that's really early. You want me to sign before, I even finish this semester. And now it's like you're giving them, a renewal offer when they move in, or
Or
maybe
before.
even before.
Or before. That's correct.
So yeah, it's crazy how that part has changed. Well, hey, one, thank you so much for being a Student Housing Insight ambassador. You're one of 12 that joined this cohort for this year, or your cohort's actually 6. We changed it up a little bit this year, and we just started bringing in 6 each year, and then that way you've got kind of a mentor that we pair everybody with, and that way they can kind of help you through this content creation project that we give to everybody. And plus you just got somebody that if there's something that you just want to get a little bit of perspective on, you've got that mentor there. But tell us so far, how has that experience been with the ambassadors?
Yeah, it's actually been great hearing from other people. I think people that work on site can probably relate to this a lot. A lot of times student housing is a lonely island sometimes, and having, especially, I think at every level, right? Like when you're at the mission control level, like I am, you do have a lot of people that you speak to every day that are at your same level, kind of doing the same thing, but it's only still within your own little bubble of Core Spaces. And so it's actually been really refreshing and nice to hear from other operators and from other, developers and big student housing companies on like the challenges they're facing and how they're overcoming them. And being able to just idea share, I think, is one of the most beneficial pieces to this ambassadors program in general. Because I think that oftentimes we forget that there are other people going through the same struggles, and we get so caught up in fixing it at our space and our place. But it is useful to talk to other people in other industries and hear how they're doing it. Because I think, at the end of the day, the goal of any large operator, developer, owner, whatever it is to just really provide the best living experience for our residents that we can.
Yeah.
And being able to share those thoughts and ideas with people that are equally as passionate as you are has been really invaluable for sure.
Well, it's great working with you guys, and I'd show the website and the B-roll right now, but we don't have it done yet. But we are accepting, or by the time this podcast comes out, we are accepting applications for next year. So if you want to be one of those 6 to join the ambassador program, just look in the show notes. By the time this comes out, we'll make sure that is in there. And yeah, we typically end up interviewing everybody in December and try to get everybody rocking and rolling by the new year. So excited to see you go from mentee to mentor.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited. I can't believe it's crazy that it's coming up on a year. Like it's gone so fast.
Yeah. I think we're probably after they see this interview, I think we're going to have a lot of people that will put on their application, I just want to be Sarah's mentee. Well, speaking of your content project, you wanted to interview Dan Goldberg, who's the president of Core Spaces. And, I've listened to Dan at conferences and stuff. He's always been, pretty inspiring. I've loved his perspective on things and the way it actually, how a lot of that perspective and thought comes into the projects that you guys do is pretty amazing. And you mentioned you really kind of wanted to capture that, and I think you have. But anything, before we jump into the interview, is there anything you would say to the listener? Hey, make sure you lean in at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that Dan's perspective is invaluable from, a big business perspective, right? I see things from, a 10,000 foot view, and Dan has to look at the company's success from like a 100,000 foot view, right? Like he's overseeing all things. And at a company that's growing as fast as Core's, I think that his energy, his enthusiasm, his passion for the finer details is truly what is allowing this company. And I think, him and Mark are aligned, in their vision of that. I think that the attention to the finer details and really caring about what things look like from the top of the filter all the way down has been a difference maker for us. And the fact that someone at my level can have access to a Dan Goldberg is a testament in and of itself to Core's commitment to lifting up their own people. He, made a funny joke that he had like no intention of being interviewed. He's, he's not one for being in front of the camera very often, but I pitched him on it and he goes, I see why you're in sales, because you convinced me to do this. And he's such a fun, like just golden retriever of a human in general. And so it's fun getting to talk to someone like him and just sharing that passion and that energy and knowing somebody that is leading the charge of your business, that has the enthusiasm for success like he does, but is also so willing to just get in the weeds and be part of that success. Just not sitting in an office all day and farming things out, but like coming on site. Like he was at the Peyton Manning event, getting in the weeds, talking to the students, like just that level of involvement is good. And so I think that's what I really want people to take away from is truly the best leaders. And then the best, you'll hear it in the interview, like the user experience comes from the top. And I think I say that several times in the interview. So being able to interview someone at the top and hearing that he cares just as much as I do about what happens at the very basic level of our business is what I really want people to take away. And if you're a leader in any capacity at any operator or any owner or any developer, I think that is truly the difference maker here. So take what he says and try to implement some of those practices, even at your, one rung below you is impactful.
You mentioned the Peyton Manning event.
Yeah.
And it's, around the industry, there's some serious jealousy and FOMO going on about what the Peyton Manning event was. And you guys get into it in the interview, so we won't go back over it. But I've got to ask, is there any other big events that you guys have got scheduled for this fall?
You got to just keep your eyes out. You got to keep your eyes
Man.
peeled. Core is all about making memories. And so if that's one of our mantras, then I can let you fill in and read in between the lines. Let's just say we're excited about what's happening at Core in the next few months. And I hope that we get to share more details on that soon.
Well, great. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and start the interview with Dan Goldberg at Core Spaces.
Thank you. Welcome to a very special episode of Student Housing Insights. My name is Sarah Maxson, and I am joined today here by a very special guest, Dan Goldberg, president of Core Spaces. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So today we have a lot to cover. So we're going to be diving into some really cool topics, specifically how it relates to the student housing industry and the hospitality industry, right? I think there's a lot of really cool stuff we're going to unpack. We're going to dive in, to the power of hospitality and how it truly is, transforming the student housing space, and how Core Spaces is also, kind of leading the charge there. So I'm excited to talk all things hospitality, user experience. So if you're all right, let's jump right into it.
Let's jump in.
All right, great.
Yeah.
So let's start with the big picture,
Yeah.
right? So user experience is a term I feel gets tossed around often, right? And it's kind of an ill-defined, I think there's, depending on where you're at and who you're talking to, user experience can be defined a ton of different ways. So how do you define user experience?
It's funny. I've now adopted a phrase that my wife uses. And we actually at Core Spaces, including our founder, Mark Lifshin, use this phrase all the time, which is that we're not selling floor plans, we're selling experiences. And I genuinely believe that. To me, the user experience is all about the customer journey. And it's each touch point of an experience from the minute that you walk up to our properties, how you feel as you're walking into the lobby, who greets you, what that experience is like, to actually living in a unit and understanding what the light and air is and how kind of the general choreography of the furniture is laid out in your room.
Yeah.
All of those things, along with the sense and the sounds and the various senses, make a big difference. That's what we're focused on.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great definition. I think that a lot of people don't understand it from the first moment someone even pulls into the parking lot. What does that walk up to the building look like? I think that's something, as someone who's on site often, that's stuff that we look at all the time. I think that's a great way to define it. So this is user experience. Hospitality isn't a new concept, but I feel like it's relatively new to student housing or applying this very like Four Seasons, 11 Madison Park type of hospitality to student housing. I know that you and I had the really cool experience to hear a very special guest talk at one of our conferences. The owner of 11 Madison Park, he gave some really great.
Will Guidara is amazing.
Yeah, he is. So thinking about, Will's, what Will had to say to us and stuff like that, how, what inspired Core to really take a look at what people like Will and Four Seasons and Waldorf Astoria that they're doing in their spaces and translating those into student housing?
Yeah, I would say it's interesting because you're right. Like the industry as a whole, it's ripe for disruption with a hospitality-minded focus.
Yeah.
With all that said, at Core, we've always been focused on the UX and we've always kind of obsessed over it. And it's been fun to evolve along with like our changing tenant interests and what's happened. And I think what I've seen from being in student housing almost 15 years now is that you've kind of just seen an industry move from a landlord mindset, which is when I was in college living in a dilapidated row house. Like we had a crappy landlord that we had to deal with, to institutional landlords and really like apartment owners and like, how's the company going to take this? And at least there's a number to call. I didn't have any of that stuff. It was like, if I was lucky, I would have to basically knock on the door and slip a check under the door.
Right.
And so then there was like an institutionality to it. And I think now what you're seeing, right, is like kind of this idea that we don't just have to be an apartment owner as an industry, but hospitality-minded approach is really a differentiator. And that's what kids want, is how they feel. And again, kind of selling the experience, not just a bed and a place, on campus. It's really important.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. Do you have any like moments, at Core Spaces or in your student housing life where you had this like aha of like, oh, that's hospitality in student housing?
I have one.
I mean, I
Yeah,
do.
you.
I have a Rolodex
Yeah.
of them, honestly. And because we've got some time, it
Yeah.
seems, and you guys can edit this
Yeah.
however you want. I'd say that, first of all, my background is as an investor, and I was on Wall Street for 14 years, and I was in real estate investing for most of that. And one of the things I always loved about student housing was that it's always changing. And as a value investor at heart, there's a lot of like just informational advantages that people have to really knowing the submarket and specific places and building a type of real estate that there was embedded demand for, with safety, a turnkey solution, all of that. But when I came to start learning about core spaces, and there were some competitors out there that I was investing in at the same time, I was really inspired. We had taken a project at University of Central Florida. It wasn't even a design that Core Spaces had. They inherited it. They bought this property. It was a mile away from campus. At UCF, that's okay. It's still a great location because it's hot down there and everyone just drives anyway. But they did the best they could with the inherited designs to make a really cool building. And when I went to go see it, what struck me was actually before I even went into the building, I heard kind of this like, and there was like a pulsating, like, and I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I looked, and there was this awesome 1960s VW van. Not the new ones, one of these old ones that had been painted in black and green in the colors of the Knights, go UCF Knights, and had these huge retrofitted speakers on it. And Core at the time was a much smaller company back then. This was probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And one of the interns, who is now our chief creative officer, so shout out to all the people, Mitch Dalton, and many others who have had their whole careers at Core Spaces from interns on, had driven this vehicle, which they purchased for next to nothing, across the country from Seattle, and then found a local artist to retrofit this van. And the way that we did this grassroots marketing was, or the way the Core Spaces at the time, I was on Wall Street, was doing the marketing, was going around the campus and playing with a local DJ really cool tunes with this cool vehicle, making plugs for the property.
Yeah.
And they just had great beats. So even before you went into this property, you could kind of like feel the vibe. And I'd at that point probably looked at 15 different student housing investments. And I just liked that there was a company that was thinking about, again, as you walk in, even before you get into the property, what is the vibe that you're creating?
Right.
And what's something innovative and what's a grassroots approach that hasn't been done before?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it doesn't. This was really successful. Core, I was like, how is it possible that when I look at the map, this thing is far away from campus and it's still 100% occupied with great rate growth? And I think what you see is that, when you can kind of speak to the way people want to be spoken to, and believe me, I don't always need to have music played at me to have like a marketing approach. But I think at the time that was like something that was creative. It caught people's eye. I think they did it at the right times of day and night, so it wasn't super annoying. It was effective.
Yeah.
I'll give you another story that's more recent. And I think you know this because I've talked about this inside the company. But we get some publicity, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. We started to throw, with our scale, large activations because we think part of the experience is not just, we can do some really unique things where Core Spaces has gone. And one of those was a Peyton Manning event at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. We have a 2,200 bed project that's delivering this year. And to kick off leasing around this time last year in August, we had a partnership with Peyton Manning and Barstool Sports to kick off this thing, to galvanize the leasing efforts, to have some fun, to try something new. And so that was a huge success. We leased the building to 100%, which most people thought we couldn't do because it was too large. And we actually did it in the middle of the fall, which was a great accomplishment. And I think that the event that we thought of, which had never been done before, was a huge part of that. But to me, the UX is all about something that was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Our community manager there, I give her
Love
all the
her.
credit in the world.
She's great.
When I got on site, maybe 5 hours before the Peyton event, someone told me about a mom and her son that were going to do a special couple moments with Peyton. And I started to learn that what had happened is one of the people who was a prospective tenant in the building, and the way this competition worked is if you signed a lease with us, then you were eligible to go on stage with Peyton he was hosting basically a trivia game about their knowledge of University of Tennessee, and you could win $10,000 and be videotaped and get a lot of shout outs with your friends.
Right.
And so one of our prospective tenants didn't know that Peyton Manning was going to do this event. He had signed up before this marketing had started. And his mom called our community manager and said, this is like totally fortuitous. Our son was actually a Make-A-Wish candidate. Sadly, when he was younger, he was a cancer patient who was eligible at the time for Make-A-Wish. The prognosis was not good.
Yep.
And his wish was to meet Peyton Manning
Ugh.
and to get a signed jersey. And
Yeah.
so his prized possession, and thank God he lived and is thriving right now.
Yeah.
But his prized possession is a Peyton Manning jersey, which is sadly like smeared and like barely there anymore.
Right.
This jersey and a football that Peyton signed, and he still loves Peyton. And so he was meant to be at this property. And we're just really happy that this is all happening.
Yeah.
Without any prompting whatsoever, our community manager realized, hey, we could do something really special. And so we worked, and shout out to Peyton and his team. We quickly talked to Peyton's team and Peyton and said, this is the story. Do you guys want to re-sign a new jersey and football for him and say hi? And they were amazing partners and said, of course we want to do something like that. And so what Core Spaces did is we made sure that we got a ride for the mom and brought her down for the event and just said, we want you to be there. Thanks for calling us.
Yeah.
And as a surprise, as soon as she got there, we made sure that we had special time with Peyton where he was able to present them with the jersey and spend some one-on-one time together with the family.
Yeah.
And to me, that's something that not many people know about, but it's probably one of my proudest moments at Core Spaces, where we have individuals within the company that want to just provide a great experience. And I think one thing that I find inspiring is that we have a lot of people that are fulfilled by acts of service.
Yeah.
And Will Guidara talks a lot about that too. But I think she did it because she thought it was the right thing to do. And I think sometimes making a moment for someone is just, selfishly, it's incredibly gratifying to see the smiles, the tears on someone else's face when you can create that moment. And I think a lot of us at Core are hardwired in the DNA to almost have a dopamine drip for making other people feel good. And you have to, if you want to work at Core, you have to, if you want to work in the student housing industry, because Lord knows we have our challenges and tough days too.
Yes.
But those good days and those good moments are addictive. And so,
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's actually something that when I joined Core, I noticed is that there's a lot of intentionality. And I think that this actually kind of leads me into, I might go out of order in a little bit on my questions, but this intentionality from the top down on having this, user first mindset is something that I found to be really prevalent at Core Spaces. So much so that, we've got really cool initiatives coming up here that are going to give teams the ability to be those champions for those small moments. And I think that's something that when I'm on site training, I lead with that often. And I find that a lot of our support level teams lead with that kind of mentality, which I thought was really cool when I joined. And I think, if there's an investor or an owner operator listening to this podcast, that all comes from leadership. People like you and Jen and Katie and Jordan. I think that you all have that mindset, and in your meetings with us, who are the ones then disseminating this information to the on-site teams, that's how you lead. And so then that's how we lead, and that's how we train. And then that's how it's kind of a trickle down effect. And so,
100%.
I think that, can you tell me a little bit about how do you empower, those that serve directly underneath you? How do you empower them to maintain that mindset, especially in climates like we're in right now, right? It's a little bit tumultuous. There's a lot of uncertainty with students. Are they coming back? Are things about their universities changing? There's a lot happening.
Yeah.
So how do you continue to lead with that kind of hospitality mindset first? And how do you have that trickle down into the teams below you?
I'll take it in two parts. I think one is how do we think about the UX of anyone who joins Core?
Yeah.
And just it's not just about the tenants.
Right.
And then the other is how do you empower the people that you work with?
Right.
And that you're leading. The UX we talk about obviously in the context of our residents at our buildings, but I would say we're equally obsessed as a company with the UX of just being part of the Core team.
Yeah.
It's really important to us to understand actually dissecting the journey of even from when you start. So if anyone joins Core, and we hope that you do, you'll get a welcome package. By the way, when I joined 7 years ago, we're constantly evolving the mousetrap. I remember getting a mountain of paperwork, including show up for your drug test here. And it was just a smaller company where we were always focused on it, but it wasn't something we had actually put our energy into. And so I remember my experience of joining the company was more kind of a manual process, and it was still great. I was still inspired by the company, but a couple years later we said, how can we improve that? Because that's your first touch point with Core is those papers that you get. And so we work really hard from the first welcome email that you get to making sure that everything is digitalized to when you actually sign the offer. We have, I think, and shout out to our HR team, who's incredible, our people's team, people ops. So it's POPs team, excuse me, not our HR team. They've really dissected even that part of the journey. Hey, this is where you are in your process. You're 50% of the way there. There's a couple more forms digitally that you've got to DocuSign. If you have
Right.
any questions, here's your point of contact if you have any questions.
Right.
Okay, fine. Now you're official. Here's your start date. And by the way, before you start, a package arrives at your house. There's Core swag in it. And for any of you who are familiar with Core, I like to tell my family we're actually a swag company that happens to do real
That's
estate.
fair.
We've got great swag at
We
Core
do.
Spaces.
We do.
And we want you to feel the love. And so
Yeah.
there's, I don't know what it is today, but I think it still might be, we've got an awesome Coated Paxi backpack
Mhm.
with a lot of different really cool gifts that kind of embody what we're trying to do and that will
Right.
hopefully help you as an individual at Core.
Yeah.
We even have a guide for when you join, which some people may not like a guide. So we also have short 30 to 60-second videos for when
Mhm.
you join of like different tutorials, because I don't really learn by reading 100-page manuals, but
Right.
some people do, and we have that too. But it's said in our own voice. It's said in a way that's a little bit cheeky, but still is informative. And so all of those things for when you even, this is just coming on board to
Right.
Core Spaces, are things that we try to think about. So that's, I think, really important to us to have a culture where we're equally focused, not just on our tenants, but what it's like.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example just because we've got time. I really think a lot about our team members at the properties
Mhm.
and what is the experience of being at a property and what kind of pressures are we putting on you? There's a lot of things that we call it, we brand everything, of course, at Core
Of
Spaces.
course.
So we're not corporate, we're mission control
Right.
at Core. But at mission control, there's things that you just don't think about, unintended consequences. When we're trying to do things, we have new initiatives, we're growing quickly. Sometimes you've got a lot of people reaching into a property to say, oh, can you help me with this? Or
Mhm.
is there something that you need? Even sometimes when things aren't going well, a lot of people are reaching out to see how they can help from across mission control. Turns out, when you come from the eyes of some of the folks at our properties, they were like, I'm being inundated
Yeah.
with people who are well-intentioned, but I
Right.
can't even get to my day-to-day, in certain instances because there's so many people coming in.
Right.
So we have the idea of a clearinghouse. Like, here's how to, thanks, guys. We know everyone wants to help, but here's the best way to make it as efficient and make sure that we're not, again, having an unintended consequence of inundating with different messages and not
Right.
letting someone do their job. So I think even just from the technology that they use, from streamlining, trying to make sure that we are clearing the path for, I call it, I want our racehorses on the track.
Yeah.
These are stallions that we're hiring. We
Right.
hire great people and we want to make sure that their lives are, that we're focusing them on the things that they're best at right now and
Right.
trying to take everything off. And so that's why when we talk about support teams, even, I think Core Spaces is one of the few owner operators that, thankfully, we're large enough to have a full sales support team, to have a full maintenance support team, to have a full revenue management team. And these are things that are really meant to empower people at the properties
Yeah.
to have resources. And if they need help, to be able to say like, hey, I know what you did, for example, Sarah, in Clemson, when
Right.
you came to some of our different properties and just you were in the market and you stopped by and you said, this is what I'm here to do. And like, does anyone want to hear, 2 cents on
Yeah.
how I would sell this a little bit differently or
Yeah.
some tips? And I think people went from potentially being skeptical to being like, holy crap. We have this incredible resource at Core where can I get your cell phone number?
Yeah.
And can you come back to our property because this allows me to do my job so much
Yeah.
better. And thanks for being so approachable about
Of course.
it. So
I think that I think that even the word mission control is part of the user experience. I think that that's something that you don't really think about. Like even the way you brand your corporate level support, like
Yeah.
the word corporate feels like harsh
Yeah.
and kind of almost out of touch. And
Yeah.
then sometimes like HR
Yeah.
feels harsh and out of touch. And so, we've rebranded it to people operations. I think that even lends itself to this user experience that we're talking about and how, other owner operators should take a look at their employee journey as well,
Yeah.
just beyond.
It's a great point.
the-
And look at me. I've been now at Core for long enough that I don't even think about these things that
Right.
I correct. But I can remember a couple years ago, we were like, I hate corporate. Like
Right.
this concept,
It feels
this
terrible.
pejorative with like, what
Yeah.
does corporate want us to do now?
Right.
And we're like, no, we just happen to be sitting at mission control.
Right.
But like, we want to make this, a lot more open feel.
Yeah.
And so you're right. That's even the nomenclature that we use, we kind of obsess over.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. And I think that also from like when you're working with like partners and investors, I remember I met some of the partners over one of our acquisitions deals
Yeah.
while I was in Clemson, and they were just trying to get a better sense of like, how is this property going to be supported? And so we like went out to a dinner and I was explaining, here's our mission, here's our vision, here's what we're going to change about that community. And it ended up being really successful. I think that community needed a lot of help and some facelift.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing it. And that community is now, like 10 or 12% ahead year over year. And it's there's new life breathed back into it. And I think that's huge. The cost and this facelift actually leads me into my next question. So student housing has traditionally been functionality and
Yeah.
affordability,
Yeah.
right? And why do you believe that this hospitality mindset, in these hospitality driven experiences will be a game changer in this industry, understanding that kind of like everyone's like, oh, well, it's a cost thing. And it's actually like two questions in one, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's cost. And
Yeah.
how do we build these buildings that we can afford them and see a return on investment for the partners
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you think hospitality factors into all that?
Again, I'll go back to
Yeah.
we're selling experiences, not floor
Yeah.
plans. And I think that, listen, people can have that perspective that we're just trying to provide housing at the lowest cost. That's not our business model. When you think about your best memories from college, like, what do you think about? Like, what are the things that pop up to you? It's probably, for me, it's nights with my friends.
Mhm.
It's meeting my wife at a bar in college. And I have such a strong affinity for those things.
Mhm.
And we want to create those types of experiences. And I
Right.
think that there's real brand recognition and an intangible premium that actually creates a long-term business successful model
Yeah.
that really no one else is trying to tackle in student housing right now. And I really, really am passionate about that. And I believe that. And I can give you examples of how we're seeing. We have done some surveys recently that 65% of the national tenants that we surveyed, these are not our tenants. We paid a third-party company to look at just brand recognition of the Hub brand.
Mhm.
It was 65% of students that were surveyed knew the Hub brand.
And why do you think that the Hub brand, knowing
Yeah.
that like obviously Core has other brands,
Yeah.
what about the Hub brand has made it so recognizable?
It's when you talk about being intentional at Core, there's a couple things. I
Yeah.
mean, one, there's a lot of hubs. That's the most
Right.
common of our brands. And they're beautiful properties that hopefully have great experiences where a lot of this is word of mouth.
Mhm.
Oh, I have a sister at Georgia who went to a hub. I have someone else that I knew that I visited and it was such a cool experience. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is just free marketing by
Yeah.
doing the right thing by our tenants. The other thing that we're doing that I think others are a little late to the game on is social media. We have if you go to some of our competitors, don't have a unified brand. They have different properties or named different things.
Yep.
And I think they're missing an opportunity if they have good properties.
Right.
Because we have the Hub on campus as our Instagram and TikTok handle.
Yep.
Look it up.
Goes viral all the time.
It goes viral all the time. It's amazing to think that a company that's in student housing could have a TikTok and Instagram video that got 30 million hits last year in one video.
Multiple have over a million.
Yeah, multiple have over 1 million.
Yeah.
And what we see from that is a ton of brand recognition that comes with that. And from that brand recognition, I think you have people that want to hear where there's a buzz about a property. So there's a marketing element to that. There's a curiosity to learn like that. I think there's a connection when you see those videos that go viral. We think that, the generation that we're catering to right now doesn't want to be sold to. They want to feel like they have a connection. And a lot of the
course.
videos that are being produced are not these things that are going viral are not like,
They have no sales
hey, come
messaging at
live
all.
at Core Spaces Hub.
Right.
Here's what we're trying to do at Mission Control and the experience. It's oftentimes videos that are like incidental videos, actually, that one video, for example, that got 10 million hits last year. I looked at it. This is how I know I'm not cool. I mean, I've always known that I'm not cool, but you really start to feel out of touch when I watched this video like 10 times. I was like, I don't know what's going on.
What's happening here?
And I'll just describe it. Maybe you've seen this before.
I'm sure.
It's a 30-second clip. There's a bunch of roommates and one walks in the door and the other goes, hi. And the other walks in the door and the other goes, hi.
Yeah.
And then the last person comes in and she goes, hi. And everyone starts laughing. And I was like, why does this freaking video have 10 million hits? And my wife, who's much wiser than I am, shout out to Madeline, was like, no, this is the thing. You now know what they're doing is they're guessing what their roommate is going to say when she comes in.
Yep.
And really what that speaks to me is that she knows these people like siblings. She's created this community around her that feels like family. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that genuinely resonated with a lot of people that associate that with a Hub brand. That's
Yeah.
pretty special.
Yeah, I agree. There's actually one where we
we recently started a TikTok trend. I don't know if you saw it. It's like these girls, they have like the sheets on over their heads and like ghosts, and they're dancing around a candle.
The
And it's like,
seance.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when your roommate brings a new boy home for the first time, and it's taken in one of our communities. It went ultra mega viral. And I actually started seeing the trend go around on my own TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not Gen Z. I am a millennial. But when
Totally.
it makes it to my TikTok algorithm, I'm like, oh man. And so then I traced it backwards and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is from Hub on Campus.
This is us.
Yeah. I thought that was like such a cool thing. And I think that again, once people do a little bit of exploration, you know, Jordan always talks about how someone needs to see something 3 times before they'll inspect it. And I think that's so true with Gen Z nowadays, because these kids get just bombarded with marketing messaging their whole lives. They have been. And so I think when, you know, you take a look at that and you're like, oh, this was a student housing company that made this. Like, that's crazy. I think that's really cool. And that's not expensive to do.
No.
Right? Like those types of just fun, very genuine moments. I think that that's also what students want, is these like genuine moments of connectivity in an increasingly unconnected world. I think that they want those genuine moments. So this actually leads me to my next question. So there's this belief, and I've heard it and I've had some conversations with people that creating these hospitality moments is expensive or is costly. So what would you say to, you know, another owner, operator, developer when it comes to investing in those types of experiences? And let's talk about it from 2 aspects. Let's talk about it from like a property operational budget, right? That's that time of year, right? New budgets are about to start. But then also from like a building development standpoint, especially because sometimes I think people think creating those experiences in your building can come at a really high cost. And I think that Core balances that experience really well, like seeing the buildings we develop and stuff like that. So let's talk about it from both places. So let's start with from like an operational budget standpoint. You know, what would you say to someone on how to drive those experiences while keeping costs relatively normal?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that there's no relation to the cost that you spend versus the quality of the experience that you have. Now, sometimes you can have really fancy experiences. By the way, some of the worst experiences I've had have been around fancy things that just felt cold and not warm. So, you know, I think that, you know, correlation is not causation, and it's really the thoughtfulness and the mindfulness. You talked about Will Guidara, and in his book, he talks about at 11 Madison Park, you know, at the time, the nicest restaurant in the world. They had an experience where they had overheard a family or someone on the team at 11 Madison Park. There was a family visiting from outside of the country. And
this is my favorite story.
Yeah,
I know where you're going.
There's a couple of these. But they'd never had a hot dog before.
This is my favorite one.
And so someone overheard a table talking about how they were so happy to go to the best restaurant in the world. And their regret before they got on the plane later that night, I believe, was that they hadn't had a hot dog. And
New York
they were going to be
street
full.
hot dog.
They hadn't had a New York street hot dog. And so the team at 11 Madison Park was so attuned to making and being addicted to creating great experiences for people that they went back, they caucused in the kitchen, and the chef sent someone out to the street. He bought a New York City hot dog from a vendor. They brought it back into the kitchen. They cut it up. They put some garnish on it. They made it look great. And they brought it out as a course in the middle of the meal. And they said, we overheard you guys, and we didn't want you to leave the country without having a taste of a New York City street hot dog.
I love that.
That was not a very expensive thing to do.
No.
And I think that's some of the best marketing and type of experiences that you can create for someone.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, one of our managers at a property in Penn State recently decided that she wanted to write thank you cards and welcome cards to the parents of the individuals. By the way, shout out to Michelle at Canyon. That's a very large property.
It's a very large
over
property.
1,500 tenants and parents that she's writing to. And she and her team took the time, gosh knows how much time that took, but they took the time to write individual notes that having your kids in our building is really, we take this seriously, and we're grateful that you chose us. And a lot of people, they were writing because they'd already met or had a conversation over the phone with, and they referenced it. And we've gotten so much positive feedback from that. What was the cost of something like that? I mean, certainly people's time, and you have to have people that believe in it, but it wasn't a cost outside of that to have 2,000 envelopes and cards.
Yeah.
But I think things like that make me really proud to be at Core Spaces.
Same.
And I think go a long way for Again, now I'm a parent of young kids. They're not at college yet, but I already feel a huge sense of vulnerability having small kids. And I dread the day that they go to college. I cannot imagine how hard it's going to be to have our boys go to college someday, even though it's going to be awesome for them. And if someone, goes that extra mile, like what Michelle did at Penn State, I think I'd really appreciate that. And certainly the feedback has been great. So
yeah, for sure.
So no, I don't think that you have to do things that are very expensive to create quality experiences.
So then talk to me a little bit about like how how does the development, like how does this hospitality and UX go into the planning and the development of a building in general?
Yeah. First of all, we work with a lot of different partners that we choose our people and our partners really well. And they have to have the same cultural kind of integrity and a lot of the things that we think are the important fundamentals. But they also have to be creative and see the UX the same way that we do. And so fortunately, in-house and out of house, we work with people that are obsessed from the day one is when we start doing the drawings of what is this going to feel like when you walk in the door?
Do you think that's missing? So that day one mentality, as someone that worked in real estate investment for a long time before joining the student world, do you think that's missing often? Do you find, when you're talking to other partners or talking to other investors, that's a mindset that you generally have to explain? Like to new partners, like that's not their default? Okay.
It's not everyone, but I think a lot of people are lazy and people want to build things as a trade. I mean, at the end of the day, you can choose as a developer and operator if you want to own something forever and be proud about it, but it takes a lot more work that not everyone's going to recognize. And if a market is hot and you just build something into it and it's the right location and you get it out of the ground quickly and you fill it up and you're not interested in the longevity of that building and you sell it, you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I think no. In fact, on the capital side,
that is a detriment? Sorry, do you think that that's a detriment to the design if they know that they're just going to?
For sure.
So do you think that more developers should be putting thought into? Do you think that there's any monetary benefit for a developer to put in a little bit of extra thought from a hospitality perspective? Because then if the building is built in a way that makes sense for maybe the next owner operator who's going to own it and operate it, do you think that there's any monetary value in that?
For sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think, again, you may not be able to directly tie the ROI to having thoughtfully designed spaces.
Right.
But I can tell you, it absolutely is essential to students. And you can fool investors. You can probably get it full if you have the right marketing and it's a decent location and the dynamics are good enough. But at some point over the course of history and over the time period, if you hold it long enough, people are going to realize what's a shitty property and what's a great property that they want to be part of and what's a community that they want to be part of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. Now, can you get away with it and can you cut a corner? And do I see a lot of developers try to get things up quickly or they just have lazy design? Sure. It's sometimes the easier thing to do because you don't always get rewarded for the intentionality.
Do you look at those deals differently? So I'm not going to say it out loud, but I have a couple of developers in my mind who I have done acquisitions through or been a part of the acquisition of. And it's kind of this thing where the new owner operator, like Core Spaces is going to go acquire a property. Yeah. We know who the builder was. The builder they make the same kind of cost cutting measures and sometimes we decide we don't want to do this deal because we know what it's going to take to get the building up to speed. Do you think over time, if a developer who's just a build sell type of developer, do you think that owner operators in this space in particular start to pick up on that? Or does it not really matter? I mean, I'm asking you as someone who doesn't really know.
It honestly depends. It depends on the market and the environment and how hot things are. And shout out, a lot of our competitors are doing things that are generally decent projects.
Yeah.
They're not fraudulent, about to fall down tomorrow. But there are corners that you can cut, right? Or there are just details that you can overlook. We always talk about, especially in these larger projects, when you look down the hallways, it's easy if it's a small building to just have carpet and some paint on the walls, one color. But when you start building projects that are over 500 beds, if you walk onto floor 7 and you look down what feels like a cruise ship, I mean, it's almost like it starts to mess with your brain a little bit. Like it feels like you're in The Shining or something.
And the hallway just keeps going and going.
This uniform approach, it's like you're looking into a mirror.
Yeah.
And do you get paid to spend more money breaking up the sight lines by adding some different types of, and I won't go into all of our proprietary elements,
Yeah.
but do you want to design something where it doesn't feel like a cruise ship? Are you really going to get paid for that or not? We think over time, when you add it all together, the sights, the senses, the vibe, that there's going to be a recognition for that.
Yeah.
But we take a long-term approach. And so some people might get lucky by not thinking about those details.
Yeah.
When we think, there are competitors, though, just as we start riffing off of this, that build good quality projects, but they get the programming wrong. I'm not going to say who they are, but some of our favorite buildings that we buy are good locations where they have decided for their programming. There's one property I'm thinking of in particular that has a movie theater in it, that has a room, one of their main common spaces for their tenants, and it has poker tables and pool tables. You're like, cool, that was like 2002, right? And even then, those weren't very activated spaces.
Right.
And so what we look at is, we have this canvas now where the bones of the building are good enough, and we can price in whatever work needs to be done to get them up to our standards. But now we can take these buildings and put activation into them. What does it feel like? And when we talk about the UX, what does it feel like to go into a space and be activated? I'm always inspired by, when I'm on vacation, we look for a great coffee shop. And like when we're not good planners in advance. So usually my family will kind of sit that first day, find a great coffee shop with a vibe, and we'll kind of plan out our trip. And how do we create that type of energy in a property? It's hard to do. But when you walk into a Core Spaces property, I hope you do, and you'll see that there's an aura, like there's a vibe different. And there's an activation, meaning there's people around. There's places where you can break away. There's places where you can congregate with friends, but usually there's an activity level that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
When we were walking into buildings that have the poker tables and the pool tables, it's empty because that's not really an activated space.
Yeah.
It may not be what people want to use. It's also not a place where people can congregate. What we found just generally as a theme is people want more wellness spaces. They want more fitness areas, which is kind of like a wellness concept, and they want more study spaces and breakaway areas. And how do we create those really well? That's been definitely a trend in the industry. And so when we see competitors that haven't done that from an activation perspective, we look at it as a great opportunity because we think we'll be able to raise rents and just get more interest in the building because of that.
That's actually interesting. I have a couple of properties that I'm thinking about. When you walk in, I, like you, have walked into probably over 250 to 300 student housing communities at this point in my career. There is a difference when you walk in and a space feels like warm and a space feels cold. And I think there's actually a couple of developers that do this really well.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, like, in particular, Olive Madison is one where it was my first day at Core Spaces.
Okay.
I came to Chicago, got my laptop, and then got in a car with Jordan and drove up to Madison.
Okay. I remember that.
Yeah.
I met you in the morning before you went up.
You did.
Yep.
I was like 6 hours into my occupancy here at Core. What I noticed is that space, when I walked in, one, we had just launched leasing, so that was something, but we had the New Here coffee in the lobby, right around the corner from the desk. The desk didn't feel like a desk. You know, sometimes you walk into these spaces and it feels very much like a reception desk. And there's people sitting like a dentist office almost. This felt much more casual, and it was like all warm tones. The canoe hanging above. I felt so invited, even in a very crowded, like that lobby. There was probably 80 people standing in that lobby waiting to sign a lease, which, like, shout out to the Olive Madison team. They crushed it. But that space, even crowded, felt really warm. And I think that is like a true signifier and a true differentiator between places that people want to live and places that don't, right? Because kids want to live in a house that feels like mom and dad's.
There you go.
And I think parents want to feel that too. Actually, I'm doing it in my own house. I just redid like my house when I bought it. All millennial gray, all of it. Very cold. The lights were all those like really bright white LED lights.
No.
It felt like a hospital.
Yeah.
So my fiance and I, the first thing we did was like changed all the light bulbs, changed all the paint color because we just wanted a space that felt more homey. And I just redid my bathroom over. I wallpapered for the first time.
Congrats.
Crazy. Thanks. It was a nightmare. But I think that, you know, all of this is to say that intentionality behind the warmth of the space is part of that user experience, like you were saying at the beginning. And it doesn't really, it doesn't really cost a lot. I think that, if you have a good design team that also falls in with your mission and understands, what the value in creating that very first impression. Because as someone that teaches sales, you have 20 seconds from the time
That's right.
they walk in the door to like form a first impression. And oftentimes that 20 seconds starts from the moment they walk in the front door and then they make their way to the front desk. And that can take 18 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So
well, I think you
great.
nailed it.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I've got some bad news though, which is the longer that you work, if someone hasn't told you, the longer that you work at Core, the more when you go to your own home or you go into other people's homes, you start to have now a more discerning eye of the journey and the experience.
Yeah.
And so you may have a more critical approach to some of your
I
own
love
or
that.
others, which is a blessing and a curse,
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah, it was funny. I was literally looking at the way they installed the lighting fixture and I'm like, why would you install it so that it's literally impossible to get off the wall?
Lazy.
You're going to want to change it.
Who thought about this?
It's the worst. It is the worst. Okay, so my last question for you is if you could give one, knowing that this is going to be, seen and heard by the masses that watch Student Housing Insights and at all different levels, site level all the way up to top executives, as the president of a company that oversees all acquisitions, development, operations, what is some advice you could give or a couple of pieces of advice you could give to, a fellow executive about creating that user experience hospitality mindset, one at your level, but then also kind of at the site level?
I think you have to listen.
Okay.
Probably more than anything as a leader. Obviously, you have to have a North Star and a conviction on where the company needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some of our best ideas come from our people. And that's a unique part of the Core culture.
Mm-hmm.
We are really focused on harvesting. I mean, we spend so much time on getting the right people. And I personally, when you asked earlier about how do you empower people not to mission drift from this question, but I like to bet on people. And if you get the right person, let them do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much time trying to for the selection process of who should be at Core that we need to listen to them. Oftentimes, again, some of our best ideas come and we need to create those forums and that level of comfort where anyone can raise their hand with a good idea. That's something I would encourage anyone to do, is to create a forum to really listen to your people.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised on how much better you can get pretty quickly. We host, after you asked about our development and design and how do we have intentionality with the UX, developing buildings is, and in student housing, as most of the listeners on this will know, if you miss that window, man, you're in trouble, right? And so student housing has a pressure and also, right, you have a leasing curve. And so if you miss a year of leasing, you're screwed for the next year. There's unique pressures in student housing. There's unique construction pressures because you can't push that deadline like in other asset classes without having some really punitive outcomes.
Yeah, not great. Been a part of some. It's not great.
It can be tough.
It's real tough.
It can be really tough.
It's also tough on reputation, not just on cost, but reputation too.
So there's already a heightened sense of pressure, and we're doing more and more every year at Core. But one thing that we've had a tradition of from the start, which is part of the reason I came to Core, to be honest, is I remember walking Hub Madison with Mark Lifshin in 2016, a year after it had been built. And I said, this is the nicest property I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He walked me through the music room. He walked me through the volleyball court that turned into an ice skating rink. I'd never seen that before. We walked up to the infinity pool on the roof, which is an isthmus with water on both sides. And then you look out onto the campus. And I was like, Mark, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is nicer than pretty much any other property. Forget about student housing that I've seen.
Multifamily or otherwise.
And Mark said, well, wait, why don't you come in a week from now? We do a session where we talk about all the things that we screwed up. There's so many things that we screwed up in this building. We did this wrong. We did this wrong. And I won't say all the specifics, but why don't you come? And so he invited me as a potential investor at the time, which I didn't take him up on, but I did get a lot of the lessons learned. And I think part of Core's culture too is being relentlessly critical and opening to other people's criticisms of what we got right and what we got wrong, frankly. And so some of this is, we host ideation sessions, and some of this is we try to create safe spaces where we can say, I know this was a really tough development period, but before we forget, and while this is in our muscle memory, and while it's in our PTSD, right? Like, let's just unpack what we would have done differently. And
do you think that you guys are really good at that? So those like critical. So as someone who kind of has watched from afar in a lot of cases, I often see sometimes that everyone's like, oh, well, you can't say that because it's you'll hurt someone's feelings or you'll ruffle someone's feathers. Do you think that the culture that you and Mark have created allows for like a more honest dialogue about those misses and lessons learned?
I certainly hope so. I think kudos to Mark, who I think is a strong leader with lots of conviction, is a visionary, but also has vulnerability and a lot of like honesty and transparency. I don't know if this will air, but like if we're going to air this anecdote, but when I was an investor, I think it was Valentine's Day 2017. I hadn't talked to Mark in a little while, and my wife's name is Madeline, and I texted a Valentine's Day, like, I love you so much message. And it went to MA and somehow it autocorrected to RC Lifshin. And I sent Mark Lifshin like a
very sappy.
Like a sappy, corny Valentine's Day text. And I just remember hitting send and being like, oh my gosh, like I've just sent an operating partner this sappy message. And immediately he was like, love you too, bro. Not sure if this was for me. And I think there's like always been transparency, openness. You know, we talked about how we're both weird before we got on the podcast, right? Like, I think we welcome a lot of diversity into the company. Yeah. And not only do we have a super diverse executive team and diverse company and a lot of different metrics, but I think we're really welcoming of different opinions and different perspectives. That's really important, I think, to have a top-down mentality. And I think it starts with Mark. I try to embody that too. We're very different people, but I think we have that commonality. Yeah. And hopefully that tries to create an environment that does that.
Yeah. So then talk to me a little bit about from like the site level perspective, like how, you know, what kind of advice can you give, you know, maybe like a regional level or a, you know, like a VP level individual to empower, you know, site teams to really lean into that UX hospitality mindset?
I think we see a lot of people who are asking permission, and I would rather ask for forgiveness than permission. I think we should spend a lot of time trying to hire the right people because we trust you. And if you see something like Michelle at Penn State didn't ask for permission to send handwritten notes, it's something that she felt was a really good idea, and she put on the budget these note cards. And I'm so proud that something like that would happen. And I'm not sure how much permission that she asked, but I want to encourage people that if they think they're doing the right thing and they have the core ethos of creating great experiences for their tenants, that they're going ahead and doing that, and that we're helping to champion them and helping to support them along the way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's like the biggest thing is, as a, you know, people are always like, can I do this? Could I do that? And it's oftentimes like less than $100, and it would like really make a difference to a student. My favorite, I'll give you one anecdote. My favorite from a past life, going through a really tough opening, had a lot of issues in the building, which required some tenants to be like barred from entering their unit for a period of time. It was tough. It was tough. And there was this one girl who had been like a difficult tenant in the past, just day to day. And then she was unfortunately displaced from her unit. She forgot a book that was in her unit. And I was the property manager at the time. And I really encouraged my staff, like, hey, it's a yes, how can I help you type of, I call it the Chick-fil-A mentality, like my pleasure mentality. Like there is no in this, like within reason. And without prompting, this girl came down and she was at the top of her lungs, poor thing, screaming at one of my staff, like, I have to get in and get this book or else I'm going to fail this quiz, all this stuff. One of my other staff members who wasn't dealing with her directly heard this, silently got up, went to his car, drove to the bookstore, which was around the corner, and with his own money, it was a chapter book. I mean, maybe it was like $6 or $7, bought her this book, and then came back, and she was still sitting in the lobby talking to her mom and was like, hey, here's the book.
Wow.
And just did it for her.
I love that.
I know. It's such a great example of like when you really lean into that, because that was my directive to the staff. Like, within reason, help somebody out, because we're already, you know, in this instance, we were already putting them through quite a lot. Yeah. But, you know, the fact that he just and he's like, I hope it's okay that I did that. And I was like, well, I'm going to obviously reimburse you the $10 it costs you to go do this. And how do we
celebrate this as a case study that can inspire other people, right?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, of course. That's like one of my favorite memories. And he's such a good kid. I still keep in touch with him via LinkedIn.
I love that.
Cool. Well, is there, you know, any other words of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience before we adjourn?
It's all about the people.
Yeah.
And I would say, Sarah, thank you so much for inviting me
Of
on this
course. Thank
podcast.
you for doing this.
I would
This was
say
so fun.
more than this, thank you for taking a bet on Core Spaces. Like, you have been an exceptional addition to the team. We've been following you from that moment that we met in the morning to throwing you into the laundry machine at Olive Madison your first day, seeing all those leases be signed, by the way. Shout out Olive Madison. And, to be here around a year and to make the impact that you've made on this company is outstanding. And we have a lot of great people here, and you've been exceptional, and we're really grateful for everything that you've done for us.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that goes on the record too, that, I'm just so proud that we get to spend some time here together. And what you've done with the sales efforts and how you've breathed life into this program as we've grown, and how essential you are to this company is worth noting. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's actually been a lot of fun. I love a fun challenge, and I think that the formation of a department is never something that's super easy.
Yeah.
And I think all of this, like, a lot of companies don't have this, like, UX department or a sales department that's super dedicated to those types of things. It's not easy, but I tell you, it's been really cool to also hear feedback from the site level teams, and just like having people that especially at your level, that you can breathe easy knowing that there's a group of individuals that are like championing those messages all the way down to even our part-time college age students. It's actually been a real thrill. I've had such a good time doing it. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And thank you again to Wes, and I'll toss it back over to him. Thanks.
Well, again, Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time out to interview him. Thank you, Dan, for taking the time to meet with Sarah. We're all better for it. And, it was kind of crazy. Well, one, I'm glad you went to Chicago to do it and were able to sit down with them versus, we're currently, I don't know, a couple 100 miles away from each other. And, it was, it's just so much more, I feel like, comes through when you're sitting face to face. And so, again, thanks for not just taking the time out, but, making sure that you guys were able to schedule it while you were in Chicago. And we got you a studio and got all that worked out. And so it looked great. So, hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about, something that I just want to expand on a little bit. You asked the question about, hey, properties that don't, necessarily have the budget. I mean, Core does a lot of new construction, and it's great to put these like Peyton Manning level events, into the construction cost, right? And I think that's it's kind of like Super Bowl commercials, like, dollar for dollar, you're probably going to get the best return on if you can afford a Super Bowl commercial, right? And, I think for a new dev, especially, the size of everything that you guys are doing in Knoxville, like that makes so much sense in the world. And that obviously paid off. I know it was a big risk, but I think it's paid off.
Yeah.
Not everybody's new construction. Not everybody, has got kind of, and I don't think it needs to be something to that level, especially if you're existing property.
Yep.
But, a lot of the student housing properties have gotten some age on them. There's a lot more that they're having to focus on, from a maintenance perspective. And that's where, maybe a lot of the dollars are going to for CapEx expenditures. And, that's something when you guys did that, I heard it from a lot of people around the industry of, we don't have core money. Right.
Right.
But you guys bring it up, and you talk about the example of the restaurant and the kid that wanted the hot dog, right? Yep. Any other kind of experiences like that you would have your colleagues in the industry say, hey, pay attention to kind of these touch points?
Yeah, I think it is really about the mindset that you create with your on-site team. So one other example I have is I was at a property, a newly acquired property. So we were doing a lot of turnover. It was, a confusing time for the residents. So we had just put out a little, drinks bar, maybe cost $30-$40 to just set out while they were moving out. Cause it was like move out weekend, the weekend we acquired them. It was a whole thing. And I was sitting at the front desk, and I was about ready to restock the cooler full of like chilled waters. It was hot. these girls walked in and we were out of water. And one of the girls, I just was listening as they walked in, and she said, "Oh man, I wish they had some water." The fridge where all the water was being chilled was just behind the desk. And I heard her say that, and they were waiting at the elevator. So I got up, went around, grabbed, enough water for each one of them. And I just walked up to them and I said, "Hey guys, sorry that we were out of water. Here's some chilled water before you head up on the elevator." It was as simple as that. And the young lady came back down and she was like, "I just want to say thank you again. We were so hot. We had just gone on a jog, and that was so nice of you. You didn't have to do that." And I was like, "Oh, that was my pleasure to do that." It was no cost or time at all for me. And I think that's, we tell our teams when we're on site, when my team is on site, when the operations support team is on site, look for those little moments. It can be as simple as telling someone, "Hey, I hope you have a good day today."
Yeah.
Or your maintenance guy leaving a little postcard behind saying "Hey, we were here. Scan this QR code to let us know how we did."
Yeah.
Or, a small little jar of candy that's always full, that are full of mints. There's one property that does mints, and these kids will come down and they're like, "Do you guys have the mints today?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." It's and it becomes a signature thing. And it's those small touches that really make a difference. I think also, the way that the lobby smells and the music that's playing when you come into the lobby is also really important. Just setting the stage and setting the tone for when these students come home or come to the community for the first time. So those are just, small things, Wes. I think it's really about seeing your residents not just as your consumer base, but really having a vested interest in improving their day-to-day lives. And you take that to heart as, whether you're a front desk leasing agent or a community manager, how can you improve the lives? And then it makes your job easier, because then you deal with less resident dissatisfaction, or, it improves everything when you think just about the consumer journey and the resident journey. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Saying hello and goodbye is free. Right? Having a positive attitude when a resident comes and speaks to you is completely free, but it does require a specific mindset. And that's really what we're trying to do at CORE, is beyond the big flashy Peyton Manning events. It's truly this level of the "my pleasure" customer service mantra that we all know from Chick-fil-A, that just very humble and genuine interaction with each person that comes across us is really step one.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything, how do you a lot of times integrate that into move-in day?
Yeah, I think move-in day, again, it's really emphasizing the attitude, right? And it's hard. I have done many move-ins, and a lot of times we're coming off the heels of a very tight turn. And so we're exhausted and we're tired, but again, greeting everyone with a smile, having a very intentional check-in process, a smooth check-in process. I think that one thing that we ask all of our teams to do is walk the check-in process as a resident. Walk into the building, put all your signage up, set up the table, and walk it yourself. Is it easy? Is it intuitive? Does it make sense? Are there pain points? Are there sticking points? Are there pinpoints or lynch points where people are going to get stuck or trapped, or, whatever it is? Walk it yourself. Again, that's free. That just takes your time. And I know time is valuable, but it's not more valuable than making sure that first moment is an easy one.
So I mean, this is going to be coming out after move-in day. But you and I are recording this on August 1st. Truth be told, I've got a property that I do fractional asset management for that has move-in tomorrow on the 2nd.
Yeah.
And they had move out back on the 15th. And so a few hours ago, I called. I've got a new manager there who's never been in student housing, and she's been prepared, or we've been preparing her of, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This is what it's going to be like. Right. And so I called her, knowing tomorrow is the big day, and just said, hey, how's it going? It's been a couple of days since we've talked. And she was like, well, we pulled out an all-nighter. We were here past midnight last night. And I said, okay. And she said, we're probably going to do that tonight. And I said, you can't. You just can't, because it's you got to have everybody with smiles on. And I want everything to be perfect, but at some point you got to you got to pull the plug
Yep.
and make sure everybody gets rested up and make sure exactly what you said. You kind of go through that process, actually walk it, not just go through it in your head. I think that's important. But so yeah, for anybody new to student housing that's listening to this, and maybe this is your first year doing it, make sure that you heed that advice. Hey, the other question I wanted to ask you to expand on a little bit as well is this idea of branding properties. You guys have done that with Hub and some of the other, I don't know if I should really call them asset classes, or they're going after a particular type of student, either based off of distance to campus, amenities, or whatever. And I've been a part of that as well. And just like I think you mentioned an example too, where you had siblings that one was a little bit older and had an experience with the brand, and so the other sibling starts in a new market and starts school in a new market, and that same brand is there, so they're familiar with it. I was amazed at how quickly that actually happened. Within a year of establishing that brand and seeing that, but you've got to be really good about, on the customer service side, because in a lot of situations it's going to help you. But if you've got a situation where the experience wasn't great, you're going to end up having problems and not being able to capitalize on that. And what are your thoughts on how that, assuming everybody's able to check the boxes with user experience, when it actually comes to thinking about how to brand, should it be based off of, certain things as it relates to, distance to campus and that type of thing? Because I've seen it on the other end where maybe somebody's in a single market or a very regional market, and they may have a scattered site portfolio mixed with, several small buildings, apartment buildings, and they'll do their apartment buildings under one name, and it's typically kind of like, we'll just use Hub for example, so it'd be like Hub on 9th or Hub on whatever, and then their single family stuff has is typically kind of the same factor that they put into it. So anybody, if there's a group that's out there thinking about that now, is there something that you would say, hey, think about it from this perspective?
Yeah, I think that our branding is very intentional, especially the Hub brand, right? Hub is core spaces, right? We have our own Hub on campus TikTok that is not really any site. It's not site specific, but it's brand specific. Think of it like Target, like Target has one Target and it covers all the Targets. And we have sites have their own Instagrams, but Hub on campus is like the one that really creates that lifestyle content. So I think that if you're thinking about, expanding into brands, really identify what you want that brand to be. And I think that the cool thing about Core is that the Hub brand is our brand, but every building is designed to enhance the lives of the student population it's going to serve. I think that's like kind of the core mission here, right? Is just because it's called Hub doesn't mean it, like Hub in Tempe, Arizona is not going to look the same as Hub Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They're going to be very different, but they're going to have the same energy, right? Like it's the same brand. It's that same kind of like thread of just true, genuine care and true like high-end experiences that we're going to provide. So I think people need to think about it less about the name and more about what is the mission of the brand, right? What do you want people to experience? Because I think in unlike hotels, student housing, often we want to build the best and we always want to build the newest and the brightest. And so we have several brands and they're all going to be class A, all of them. But I think, unlike Marriott that has like a JW, but then they have a Spring Hill Suites, those are more cost, like the JW is going to cost more than a Spring Hill Suites is going to cost. At Core, it's less about that. And it's more about just differentiating the resident type, right? Like Olive, Hub Bassett, which is our new dev this year, is very kind of sleek and influencery and modern, and just it gives very just elevated adult vibes, Whereas
Yeah.
Olive Madison, which is also one of our proprietary brands, has this very like Madison, Wisconsin lake theme. You walk in, there's a canoe hanging from the ceiling. There are these really cool, like antique looking, multicolored wood floors. There's camping memorabilia and paraphernalia on the wall. Like it feels very different. And I think that's the point, right? Like if you're going to differentiate in a market, make your product the best it can be, but different from your other product.
Yeah.
Right. But then use that same thread of experience like throughout all of your brands, right? Because it doesn't matter if you live at a hub or if you live at an Olive or if you live at a Rive or if you live at a State, you're going to get the same level of customer service and care no matter where you're at. So the goal here would be we could expand into multiple brands, but it's all core spaces. And what we want people to recognize is, oh, Rive is a core spaces brand. So that's where I'm going to live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because no matter where you live, you're going to get the same level of care.
Fantastic perspective and advice. And I think I'd be interested to see how others, especially on that, kind of single market or regional focus that they've got, how they would differentiate. So listen, I appreciate so much again for you taking the time to do this. I think it was a fantastic interview that we can all take some little nugget away from, but the whole thing was just fabulous. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for taking the time to do that. I do want to, for our audience, I do want to kind of go over a few things that they should definitely check into. So yeah, I want to show everybody a couple of things with the website and some things that are going on. One, I want to remind everybody, listen, if there's any industry event that you want to check out and see, what's happening around the event space, regardless if it's something that Student Housing Insight is doing or if it's something that, someone else in the industry is doing, make sure you go to our website, studenthousinginsight.com, go to events, and you'll see basically a list of all the industry events. We'll have Shop Talk on there as well, which is coming back in September. We don't have one for August since everybody's busy with turn. And then also something else that is happening. You saw the button there with SHI Community. SHI Community has been around for a while in a couple of different ways, but we're releasing this, and you're not going to see a lot of content on here right now. But this is really kind of a hub. In fact, when you look at our groups, that's actually what we ended up calling the main community hub. So would love for folks to become a member there. You can share, this is where we're going to be sharing ideas and data. And so I want to make sure that you guys are plugged into that. We've also got some private groups and some other things that we're doing. And then last but not least, I know we've got NMHC Student Housing Conference that's coming up in October. We are also going to be doing a Topgolf mixer event, which we have done the past couple of years, and want to make sure that if you're an owner or operator, I want you to know if you're attending, you are invited. But wanted to really just kind of show the website off here a little bit on that specific event, because it is also going to be a fundraiser for the How Are You project and the work that they do with the College Student Mental Wellness Advocacy Coalition that the industry started back in 2021. So we've got a new survey that's coming out this year that the coalition is doing, and this is to go help pay for that survey that gives us so much great information and resources. Also, if you're a vendor to the space, you're certainly invited to sponsor. And so we've got information there on sponsorship as well. Then another event, which Sarah, I think you will be involved with, is going to be LeaseCon TurnCon.
Yes.
Coming up in December. There's not an event page yet. The interface has set up. It should be coming certainly by the time this podcast comes out. So we'll put it in the show notes. But we are actually holding a scholarship opportunity. We're giving away 3 scholarships. This is not just, hey, you get free registration fees or whatever. No, this is kind of all inclusive. You've got we're going to be providing round trip airfare or a $500 Visa card. So even if you're driving in from somewhere locally, you're still getting something pretty valuable there in the way of covering your travel expenses. We will also cover up to a 2-night stay at the Hilton Uptown Charlotte, which is the venue for LeaseCon TurnCon. It is in Charlotte again this year. And then, of course, free conference registration as well. So we will put that link in the show notes, but make sure that and you can nominate a colleague too. This isn't just, hey, I want to go to LeaseCon TurnCon. My property can't, afford to send me. So let me submit my application for it. Certainly do that. But even if you've got a colleague that you want to make sure gets recognized and considered for this, you've got the ability to go down towards the bottom there and do a self-nomination or a colleague nomination. So excited for that. And again, make sure that you guys join us for Shop Talk. It's shoptalk.info. Sarah, any other parting words?
No, looking forward to seeing everyone in a couple months here for sure.
Well, fantastic. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.